Welcome to Soulful Tales, where stories are not just told, but felt. If you find comfort in quiet moments and heartfelt memories, I'd love for you to subscribe, leave a like if this story touches you, and share your own thoughts in the comments. Your voice matters here, because this is a space where we remember, reflect, and connect. Now, let me take you to a small Midwestern home, many years ago, where the evenings were slow, the winters were long, and love lived quietly in the glow of a single lamp. If you've ever found yourself lingering in the soft halo of a lamp late at night, you might understand what I'm about to tell you. This story is about light, not the kind that comes from the sun, but the kind that comes from love. When I was young, my father and I had a ritual. Every night after dinner, we would sit by the old oak table. The lamp, its shade of faded cream, would spill a warm golden circle across the worn wooden surface. In that circle of light, we read. Sometimes it was his favorite classic, sometimes it was a library book I'd picked out that morning. But it didn't matter what the words said. What mattered was that we were together, his steady voice turning each page into a memory. Years later, long after he was gone, I realized something. The lamp had not just lit the pages, it had lit my life. And tonight, I want to tell you how. The first winter I remember with my father was the kind that wrapped the whole town in silence. We lived in a modest house on the edge of a small Midwestern town. The kind of place where the snow piled so high against the front porch that you had to push the door just to get outside. I was 8 years old then, with a head full of restless energy and a mind that wandered too quickly for my own good. But when the nights came early and the cold pressed against the windows like a living thing, our world shrank to a single room. The living room was warm, not because of the old furnace, but because of that lamp. It was small, its shade a soft cream color, and when my father clicked it on, the whole space seemed to exhale. The yellow light pooled across the table, spilling onto the pages of the book we were reading. That first night, the snowstorm was fierce. The wind howled down the chimney like a voice calling from far away. But inside, the air smelled faintly of wood polish and the peppermint tea my father loved. I remember my hands resting on the table, the smooth grain of the oak warm under my palms. He opened a book, The Old Man and the Sea, and began to read. I didn't understand all the words, not yet. But I understood his voice. It was slow and steady, as though each sentence had weight. Every now and then, he would glance up, meeting my eyes, and smile as if to say, "This is our time." And just like that, the storm outside didn't matter. We had our own weather, a small, golden climate made of light, wood, and the sound of his voice. If I close my eyes, I can still see it, the circle of light on the table. Everything outside that circle faded into shadow, the rest of the room, the ticking clock on the wall, the darkened window where snowflakes slid down the glass. The lamp had a way of making the world smaller and safer. In that pool of light, there was no rush, no noise, no expectation. Time moved differently there. It slowed, softened, breathed. Sometimes I would lean forward, tracing the edge of the light with my fingertip. My father noticed once and asked me what I was doing. I told him, "I want to know where the light ends." He chuckled, a warm, low sound, and said, "It doesn't really end. It just gets quieter." He was right. Even now, decades later, I realize the lamp's glow never truly left me. It lives in my memory, quietly illuminating moments I didn't know I would carry forever. We didn't talk much while reading. He would turn a page, I would follow the words, and every so often he'd pause to explain something. But it wasn't about the story in the book. It was about the story between us. The unspoken understanding that this was sacred, even if we didn't have a word for it. The lamp became our witness. It saw the way his hand rested on the table, fingers curled around a mug of tea. It saw the way my eyes darted to his face when I didn't understand a sentence. It saw the small, invisible threads that connected us, night after night. Years later, I would realize that my father was teaching me far more than how to read a book. He was teaching me patience, the kind that comes from turning a page slowly, letting the weight of the words settle before moving on. He was teaching me to listen, not just to his voice, but to the quiet that followed, where meaning lived between the lines. And most of all, he was teaching me presence, how to be fully in one moment without thinking about the next. One winter night, as we were halfway through a chapter, the power went out. The lamp's light flickered, then vanished. We sat in darkness for a beat, the silence thick around us. I thought we'd stop reading. But my father reached for the candle drawer, struck a match, and lit 3 small candles in the center of the table. Their light was weaker, wavering with every draft, but his voice kept going. It was as if the story didn't need the lamp after all. The real light was in the telling. That night stayed with me, because it proved something my father never said out loud. Light doesn't have to be bright to be enough. In the years to come, whenever life dimmed, I found myself looking for small lights. A cafe window on a rainy evening, the glow of a street lamp on a quiet road, the soft shine of a bookshop's sign. And always, somewhere deep in me, that old lamp still burned. The house was always quiet at night, except for the sound of pages turning. Sometimes Dad would pause, his finger holding the place in the book, and glance at me over his reading glasses. "Do you understand that part?" he would ask, his voice low, warm. I would nod, sometimes pretending I did, not wanting him to stop reading. And he never pushed, he just kept going, letting the story wash over us. The light from the lamp wasn't just light. It was a safe place. It was the reason I never feared the dark outside our little home. Now, years later, I sit in apartments and cafes, reading books on my own, and every time a warm glow falls across the page, I am back there, at that old table, with that same man, in that same pool of golden light. First night, I noticed the chair was empty. I told myself he was just tired. The second night, I tried reading alone, but the words didn't sound the same without his voice to carry them. Soon, the lamp sat on the table, untouched. The dust gathered around it like time was making a small, quiet shrine. I kept reading, I had to, but every paragraph felt like walking without a shadow. The room was still lit, but it wasn't the same light. It's strange how objects stay, and yet the person who made them matter can vanish so completely. When he left, we had started a new book. It was about a boy and his father, traveling across an empty land. I remember thinking how similar it felt, the way the father looked after the boy without saying much. We never reached the final chapter. Life decided we had run out of nights together. Now sometimes I take that book from the shelf and place it under the lamp. I don't open it. It just sits there, waiting, like maybe one day he'll walk in, adjust his glasses, and pick up where we left off. One evening, I turned on the lamp just to see the light again. The bulb flickered for a moment, then filled the room with that same gentle glow. It was strange. The lamp was still here, the book was still here, but the feeling had to be remembered, not relived. I realized then that the lamp was only a vessel. The real light had always come from him, from the way he made time for me, from the way he shared his world through words and pages. That night, I left the lamp on a little longer as if to tell the empty chair, I remember. I still see you, and I'm still reading. If you've listened this far, maybe you've been there too, sitting in the glow of a light that feels like home, with someone whose presence turns an ordinary night into something unforgettable. We don't get to keep people forever, but sometimes the smallest things, a lamp, a chair, a half-finished book, can keep their love alive in the quietest ways. Thank you for sharing this moment with me. If this story touched you, consider subscribing to Soulful Tales, where we keep these kinds of memories alive, one gentle story at a time. And if you have your own lamp and book memory, share it in the comments. I'll be reading.